For the past few years, the story in AI has felt, well, kind of simple, right? Just build bigger models, buy way more chips, spend a whole lot more money, and then do it all over again. But what if the next great breakthrough doesn't come from getting bigger, but from getting lighter?
And really, this just lays it all out. The old way? Just throw more of everything at the problem. But now, a brand new paper from Google Research is flipping that whole idea on its head. It's asking a pretty provocative question. What if we can get ahead by being more efficient? And folks, that's where we get into the story of TurboQuant.
Okay, so to really get why this is such a massive deal, we gotta pop the hood and look at this giant, kinda hidden problem that's been plaguing AI. And it's not what you might think. It's not just the insane training costs. Nope. The real culprit, the thing that's slowing everything to a crawl, it's all about memory.
So how does this memory bottleneck even work? Well, when you're chatting with an AI, it's got to remember what you just said, right? To do that, it uses something called a KV cache. Now, don't worry about the name. Just think of it like the AI's short-term memory. It's a little cheat sheet it keeps on hand, so it doesn't have to reread your whole conversation every single time it adds a new word.
But here's the catch. The longer you talk to the AI, the bigger that cheat sheet gets. And bigger. And bigger. Pretty soon, you've got this enormous memory burden. I mean, Google's own researchers are pointing to this as a major bottleneck for both the speed and, you guessed it, the cost of running these powerful models.
So yeah, we have a serious problem. But this is where our story takes a really interesting turn. This is where we introduce the hero of the day, a potential game changer called TurboQuant.
So what does TurboQuant actually do? Well, in simple terms, it finds a super clever way to shrink that working memory, that KV cache we talked about. Now, look, compressing stuff isn't a new idea, but the magic here is that TurboQuant does it without the usual penalty. You know how normally when you compress something, it just adds extra work somewhere else? TurboQuant avoids all that. It's just a clean, efficient win.
And when I say win, I mean the impact is huge. In their tests, TurboQuant cut down the size of that memory cheat sheet by 6 times. 6! That's just a massive, massive saving on the most precious resource in these systems, memory.
But wait, it gets even better. It's not just about saving space. See, when that memory is smaller, it's also way faster to access. On the absolute best of the best hardware, we're talking H100s, Google saw up to an 8 times performance boost. So let's get this straight. You're using less memory, and you're getting your answers way faster. That's incredible.
And, honestly, this next part might be the biggest deal of all. You get all of this without having to retrain the model. I mean, anyone in this field knows that retraining is a nightmare. It's unbelievably expensive and it takes forever. So the fact that you can just apply this to models that already exist, that is an absolute game changer for anyone trying to actually use this stuff in the real world.
All right, so an innovation this big doesn't just stay in a research paper, right? Of course not. So let's shift gears and talk about the real-world shockwaves, especially the totally surprising ripple effects this one little paper sent through the financial markets.
The first reaction on Wall Street? Well, it was basically panic. You saw stocks from memory companies like Micron and SanDisk take a hit. And the logic, on the surface, kind of makes sense, right? If AI suddenly needs way less memory, does that mean the world is going to stop buying so many memory chips? But this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Because what if that first knee-jerk reaction was completely backward? What if making AI more efficient doesn't shrink the hardware market, but actually makes it explode?
It all goes back to this old economic idea called the Jevons paradox. It's a bit counterintuitive, but stick with me. The theory basically says that when you make a technology way more efficient, we don't just use less of it. Instead, we find so many new ways to use it that our total consumption actually goes up. The classic example is fuel efficiency in cars. The better the gas mileage got, the more people drove.
So let's step back for a second. What does this all mean for the future of AI? Well, this isn't just some minor tech update. We could be looking at a fundamental shift in how AI is even built, a move away from just brute force and towards something a lot more like elegant engineering.
And it is so important to get this. TurboQuant isn't just a cool trick for your favorite chatbot. No way. Google is talking about its impact on things like vector search. Now that's the deep, fundamental plumbing that runs underneath everything. We're talking semantic search, retrieval systems, recommendation engines, the stuff that basically powers the modern internet. So the potential impact here is just incredibly broad.
And that brings us right back to where we started. For so long, progress in AI has just meant more. More data, more GPUs, more power. A total brute force approach. But something like TurboQuant points to a totally different path forward, one that's all about elegant engineering, about getting smarter, not just bigger.
And really, that's the thought I want to leave you with. While everyone's been locked in this arms race to build the biggest, most expensive AI system on the planet, a breakthrough like this hints at a very different future. It makes you wonder, right? Maybe the next great advantage in AI won't come from who has the deepest pockets, but from who can figure out how to do more with less.